positive communication.
Mark, could you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Certainly. We stand. Place your right hand over your heart, please. Ready to begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We have all members present, and we just need to approve the agenda. Do I have this really lengthy agenda? So do I have a motion?
I'll motion to approve the agenda.
Thank you, Frank.
Second.
Thank you, Joan. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. We do not have any public comments. Perfect. So we are on to planning for the 26-27 school year. Thank you.
Good evening, President Harper and our school board. We'll be sitting over here together. This is our new cabinet for the foreseeable future. And tonight, the study session is to start the conversation around the future of EUSD, starting with next year and beyond. And so we have a series of slides to go over with you tonight. A refresher of some information around like our LCAP and our budget, some more updated information around our budget, and then hopefully we're going to have a good conversation around the direction that we want to recommend to go in, and we want to make sure that the board understands what we're thinking and what I want to hear what you guys think about that. And so this is a study session, not a regular board meeting, and so I'm really looking for there to be some good conversation throughout tonight. So that being said, we're going to do the triple click of the mouse to make it work, and we're not working. Did it work? Was that you? Okay. So when I do this, you push your button. So starting off, we're going to have Mr. Rick Oser, our Assistant Superintendent of Educational Services, is going to go over our current year. Now, this is the current year LCAP, as we've already had adopted, and this is just a mid-year update that we would do around this time every year. So go ahead, Rick.
Well, good evening. We'd like to start off by just kind of revisiting our LCAP. It's a well-written LCAP that really meets the needs of the Escondido students and community. Well, our LCAP has 3 goals. The first goal is to provide personalized, competency-based, authentic learning experiences to create a foundation for achievement for all learners. So that's our big academic achievement goal. Second goal is to build a culture centered on whole learner outcomes, including engagement, social, emotional, cognitive, and mental health needs of our learners. And then finally, the third goal is to ensure enabling conditions are in place for optimal learning. That includes a shared vision, supportive policies, aligned resource allocation, trust, and safety. In a moment, we'll go over each of the goals and the corresponding action items. As you know, the LCAP is inclusive of all federal funds, state funds, and LCFF supplemental and concentration funds.
We're constantly reviewing all available funds to be able to determine if within the LCAP the action items can move from our unrestricted LCFF to more restricted resources utilizing our EUSD plan.
So for goal 1, which is, as I mentioned before, this is our academic achievement goal, achievement for all learners. You can see all of the action items that have been detailed in the LCAP. You can also identify the adopted budget as well as the estimated actuals. So this is a bird's eye view of LCAP
sorry, don't mean to interrupt, Rick. So when it has the framework for the future, this was last year's, or this year's spending. It's
This
not
is-
next, we're not gonna spend
Right.
that next year.
So, thank you, Board President Harper. So this is our current LCAP. So this year's LCAP, 25,
And-
26.
And
Okay,
so-
but framework is not gonna be there.
So to your question, Ms. Harper, that we have the Learner-Centered Collaborative, which is the bulk of that cost there, including also the substitute costs for having our teachers come into this room when they work on redesign process. We've been working with them for several years, and I think at this point in time, we feel like we can take this on ourselves. And so we have a lot of talent here in-house, and as I've been realizing, lately, how much talent we do have, and just the idea that if we're gonna look at redesigning and restructuring a school or our system or any of that, that's really something that has to come from within. And I think now we're at a point where we need to start looking within and using our own talent to go through the modernizing our systems and updating our educational programs to meet our students' needs of where they are today. So this, again, being the current year, we have no expectation that that would be an item in the future.
Okay.
But just to clarify, framework of the future is more than the learner-centered collaborative. It's an ongoing work that we're going to continue doing and that we're remaining committed to, just on our own without the learner-centered collaborative. And there will still be a cost for that, I assume.
If there's going to be any cost, it would be sub-time for teachers if we were to bring them together here, or even release time at their school sites. So that would be the cost associated with that. And some of that cost of substitutes is included in this line, but the bulk of that cost is the LCC contract, and that's what I'm saying would not continue. But absolutely, some costs would be involved in supporting that work happening at our school sites.
And then originally, when we came up with this, there would be some cost involved in some of the rebranding or other actions that they decide to take through their redesign program. And that money we will still have available, correct?
Yeah, as we spoke about many board meetings ago, that was something that we were looking at, and the board was interested in us using our Mackenzie Scott, the interest earnings from, to support some of that work. And in even other funds as it's appropriate, as Ms. Cagle said, looking at our most restrictive funds first, and if there's something that needs to be done or around a redesign that's allowable within one of our restricted funds, we would want to look there first, and then to going to less and less restrictive funds after that. Mackenzie Scott interest funds being unrestricted in their use. Looking around the monitor at Doug. But yes, that was money that the board had given us direction to hold on to for things that, innovation, that kind of thing, that's definitely driven through the redesign process. So it wouldn't necessarily be an LCAP item.
Any additional questions regarding LCAP goal number 1? Okay, great questions, and thanks for clarifying. Next up is LCAP goal number 2. This is to build a culture centered on whole learner outcomes. So this is our school culture and climate goal. And you can see the action items that are listed, as well as the adopted budget for this current school year, 25-26, as well as the estimated actuals for the 25-26 school year. And are there any questions for goal number 2? All right, moving along to goal number 3. Goal number 3 is ensuring, as I mentioned before, ensuring enabling conditions are in place for optimal learning. And you can see the action items that are detailed. And as you know, in the actual LCAP, these are detailed more greatly. You can see the adopted budget as well as the estimated actuals. Any questions for goal number 3?
On item 3.3-1, could we please, there's a typo in the word learning.
Still
And I
learning.
just want to point out, our
Still learning.
teachers do not leer at anyone.
Was that on purpose?
We're lifelong learners, and so we're still learning.
And if you can see, the estimated actuals aren't up to the adopted budget, but once we get there, we'll make sure to spell learning correctly. Sorry, that was probably bad.
Okay, no further spelling corrections. We're going to move on and start discussing now our budget.
The last adopted budget is our first interim. I want to point, click again for the green button. We're always looking at our multi-year projections and where we're going to be in our third year. At first interim, in our third year, we had a fund balance of $15 million, and that's $3 million over our reserve. And then since then, we've had the January governor's proposal. And then this slide really shows what the impact is on the specific revenues that are tied to his proposal. We have a COLA reduction, which is unrestricted. There's a one-time student support professional development block grant. We actually received that this year, and they're doing an extension to it for the 7 year, and that's restricted. And then a one-time learning emergency recovery block grant. That's the grant we received during COVID. And I want to say a couple years ago, they did a reduction to it, and slowly they are making us whole again. And so you'll see that. Down on the graph, I want to point out the COLA impact. At adopted budget, that was what the COLA, at first interim, that was what the COLA was, and now here's where it's projected to be for the 26-27 year, and then for the 27-28 year. In those 2 years, the combined revenue reduction is $3 million. For 26-27, the one-time money of the student support and the learning emergency recovery nets us $9.2 million. When you take into consideration the reduction in COLA and the increase in the one-time money for 26-27, there's an increase of our revenue from where we were at first interim of $8 million. In 27-28, you'll see the reduction of COLA. COLA is ongoing. That reduction just continues to compound. Thank you, Audrey. For those 2 years, it's a reduction of $3 million. There's no proposal for ongoing funds in the student support or the learning emergency, so you'll see no new revenue for the 27-28. When you look at it as a whole, over those 2 years, our revenue potential increase is $6 million. Okay, so now here's a preview of our second interim, which we'll really be seeing next board meeting. I want to point out in 27-28 that we're not meeting our reserves by $1.9 million. In our first interim, we were meeting reserves by $3 million. We had an additional. That decrease is tied to the reduction in COLA of that $3 million. And then because we're talking about 26-27, I brought in the fourth year, which will be our third year of our MYP. And as it stands, not including what the one-time funding proposal is, our fund balance in that fourth year, which would be our third, is a negative $3.4 million. Okay, so for second interim pro forma of using our EUSD plan, of using that one-time money that is proposed for next year, we're going to take that money that is going to reside in the restricted fund, and we're going to offset it by our unrestricted expenses. So we're going to move our unrestricted expenses into our restricted column, utilizing that money. In doing that, our fourth year now has a positive fund balance of $4 million. We're still not meeting our reserves at that time.
And what she means, that's what the EOSD plan has been for the last couple of years, where we're using some of the one-time funds that we've received and offsetting our general fund or unrestricted expenses into it, so that process continuing. So since the majority of funding that we're getting is in the form of one-time restricted funds, so whatever those funds are allowed to be used for, funding those expenses if they exist in our unrestricted, and transferring them to that restricted monies there in order to keep ourselves solvent.
Any questions?
Okay. That was easy for you. So now, as I talked about the USD plan, what really it's primarily to this point just being that transferring of unrestricted expenses into the restricted one-time funds. It's evolving. And we're at a point where, as you can see in that fourth year, which will become our third year of our adopted budget that we would bring before you in June, that we're still not even meeting our reserve, our minimum reserve at this point. So if we had to make decisions right now for what's going to happen in that fourth year, it would mean that we would have to reduce our expenses by at least $8 million. And oftentimes, we're pretty much always, we come in here and we talk about the budget, we talk about what are we going to do about those deficits? And it's about what are we going to remove? What limbs are we going to cut off of our system to keep the body alive? But we, as our cabinet here now, and going forward, we think there's another way to go about this as well. Certainly, we need to be efficient. We need to have expenses only to what we need and not more than that, no wasteful spending, all of those things, absolutely. But we also need to start addressing our revenue. And what you see on the screen here is the three-point test, and this is what we're using now in all of our decision-making, in our analysis of what comes before us, what do we need to do, how do we overcome a challenge, whatever it may be. When we make decisions for this district, we're running it through this three-point test. Whatever the idea is, does this idea contribute to an increase in our revenue? Does this idea contribute to a reduction in our expenses? And does this idea contribute to an improvement in our educational opportunities? Now, certainly, there's nothing we do that should do, if it's a net zero impact on our educational opportunities or an improvement of our educational opportunities, we shouldn't be making decisions that reduce our educational opportunities if we can avoid it. But I think that if we start looking at this through those first two bullet points, is this something that actually contributes to increasing the resources we have available to carry out our educational program? Is this something that we're doing that can bring about an efficiency or a reduction? Is it something that we've done in the past that we no longer need to do for what we're trying to accomplish going forward? We should reduce our expenses. And so running this through that three-point test, not everything is going to be a yes on all fronts. And certainly, even if it passes the test, it may also need to be prioritized, and is this something that we can do now? And so that's what you're going to see. That's going to keep coming up throughout the night. And I think Audrey had pointed out to me from her experience in a classroom. Tell us what you thought about what the three-point test means to us.
So if you remember in the primary grades, kindergarten, first grade, second grade, when students are writing, they write something, and at the top corner there's a kind of a cups little square that says punctuation, capitalization, do you have two-finger spacing? All of those things are things, that little square we can put on anything that we do to assess anything that we want to do to add or subtract. Does it contribute to the increase in revenue? Does it contribute to a reduction in expenses? And we could check and check and check, does it meet every single time? So every action that we make, we look through that lens.
Yeah. Thank you.
Can we stay there for just a
Yes,
second?
we can. We're going back now.
Is there a way we could do that and have that third question go to the top?
We could.
Just saying, it seems to me like that. Just, it's a small detail, but just having improvement in the educational opportunities be at the top of every list, at the top of our thoughts.
Absolutely, and it is. There's no prioritization to the order and way we laid it out like that, but absolutely, like I said in the beginning, nothing we do should do anything other than not have any impact on it, because some things, keeping the lights on or whatever. But everything we do should be an attempt to increase our educational opportunities, absolutely. But my point for that was nothing we do should reduce our educational opportunities. Now we're moving. So it comes back to the USD plan, and I've had a version of this slide on here before, and one more time, Mark, there we go, got our blue circle. And I've talked about that at several board meetings, and that was that what I drew on my board when we were looking at our budget going into this year, and like what's that main thing that matters as the budget really reflects, you know, our priorities really. And 85% plus of our budget is made up of the cost to have our workforce. So everything we do is done through people. And for us to continue to improve our educational opportunities and to function as a district and to continue to grow and continue to provide that best opportunity for a future for our students, we really need to take care of our people. And so that's where our decisions have to center around ways for us to protect the blue circle, as I call it, our people. And so there's also kind of the mantra, I wrote that on my board as well, is to reduce non-people so that we don't need to reduce people. And I think that's a big priority for us. And so as we go through our decision-making, some of the categories of things that we do, I know Audrey talked to us about when it comes to staffing, and now that's not the people, that's a vacant position. And so, go ahead.
Yeah, so if we have, as we have vacancies in our organization, we use that three-pronged question, those three-pronged questions to say, is this position still necessary? Can it be changed? And to really look at each vacancy critically to see if we need to refill it. Does it need to change a little bit? Can we combine? And that's how we can use the plan and those questions for our staff.
And then, of course, we go into like contracted services, software, supply. These are not, it's not an exhaustive list. It's just an example of the non-people related things that we would have, you know, in our budget for stuff, and to look at all of those things, and not just, and obviously we're looking at vacancies when a position becomes open and there's not a person in a position. Now we're just looking at the position. But when we're talking about like our contracted services, software supplies, all those kind of things that we're actively engaging in contracting for and purchasing and that kind of thing, even the things that we already are doing to have that analysis of, is this something we should continue to do? And I know we had a conversation earlier in this study session about one of the contracts that we've had for multiple years. And that analysis led us, that using those three questions led us to what we're looking for going forward is this is something that we can take on ourselves, right? So it will give us the opportunity to use our own talent to increase our educational opportunities. But also, it's a reduction of expenses. So it passed two parts of that test. And I'll tell you, I think that if we can do really well on those two aspects and increase our educational opportunities, we might actually even attract more kids to our schools too. That would increase our revenue. So you see that right there, that decision, give us an opportunity that maybe passes all three of those points of that test. So just as an example of how we're looking through that lens to make our decisions. And then, of course, again, utilizing our funds.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I didn't realize you skipped over
talking.
software and supplies. When we're asking ourselves those questions, the 3-point test, we're determining what funding source is best to meet that need. Not every funding source that we have, or there are some funding sources that can meet that need that we haven't necessarily tapped into in the past. And so we're looking at that and seeing where that funding source is in the 3 years and how we can apply that to be able to meet these needs.
And I just pointed out, we just had to check it for you. We did spell utilizing correctly. I was worried for 1 second there. All right. Yeah, I was watching.
So this is a slide now. This is where I start to get a little bit more fired up because this is where I'm passionate about and what we're doing going forward. And we showed this slide at a previous board meeting and had quite a moment talking about our students as our enrollment declines. We've been declining enrollment for at least 15 years. This district used to have 22,000 students. We're below 14,000 now over that time. This is just showing us, as we showed in that previous board meeting, you know, currently what the students that we've lost and where they've gone, and kind of drill down into, you know, where did they go. And at the bottom there, oh, sorry, I picked it up. I didn't mean for that one, Mark. I thought I was actually changing it. that bottom chart there too, we just pulled out some of those that have left, and like the point I was making that night when we showed this was, it's not just charter schools that kids are going to. Some of our students or families, they live here, they live in our boundaries, and they're choosing neighboring public school systems. There is an issue there where some of our families, many of our families, for the last many years, have felt that what they need for their students isn't available to them in EUSD. And that's a big concern, because it's one of the main responsibilities of the public education system in every community to meet our families where they need us to be for the good of the students that we serve. And if they don't feel we're doing that, they're gonna go find it somewhere else, and they have been. And so just to see on the bottom there, I mean, 71 of the students that left us went to another public school system in San Marcos. 29 in Poway, San Pascual, one school district. 16 left us for there. San Diego Unified, which is, you know, widespread all over the county as well. But just look at that San Marcos number. It's just right next door, not far from here. Families that live here are taking their kids out of their neighborhood, out of EUSD. And that's something that we need to start addressing. And when I talk about going forward, not just looking at what we can cut off, but what we can do to grow our district again and stem this tide that's been going on for well over a decade of families finding their perception of a better option somewhere else, and to start being that better option for them. Okay, now we can change it. So this slide, as we talked about before, we started drilling down. We said we're going to research even further. And there's something that we've done in our district, and many districts do, but we've done it, you know, here in our district, and that's the School of Choice program, where a family can apply to have their student go to any school in our district, any school that they feel they would rather their student go to than the one that they live near. And going from last year into this year, we had 664 students, their families, apply for their students to go to some school other than their neighborhood school. And we kind of highlighted the high points there on that. But between that chart and the one in the middle, we've had a good number of those that we were able to accommodate and are still with us. And there's going to be some that we were not able to accommodate, and they stayed with us still too. But out of that number, 186 were not accommodated and now don't go to our schools. 186 students at an average of about $14,000 in revenue per student, $2.4 million. Now we talk about ADA, and that's how we're funded, is on not just the number of enrolled, but how the percentage that they go to school in the year. And I've talked about that a lot, and I'm very careful in that because I still fully believe this, that the importance of our attendance is not just the funding. The most important part is that you can't learn if you're not in school. But now let's really start looking at the other side of that equation too. If they're not coming to our schools, we're losing resources that we need to be able to grow our educational program and to continue our educational program. And if just from last year to this year, and we know we've been losing from 22,000 to below 14,000 now, we know we've been losing students. They've been making choices outside of us all those years. If just this year it was 186 families that came to us and said, we'll stay with you if we can have this school, and we weren't able to get that done for them, and they left. That 2.4 million is spread out across all of the other educational opportunities outside of EUSD. We need that here. We need that here to protect our people, to invest in our people, to invest in our educational programs, in our schools, in this community. And so I'm getting fired up again because this is the approach I want to take. Yes, let's find efficiencies. Let's find things we don't need. Let's stop doing things we don't need to continue doing that aren't contributing and passing that test. But let's start doing things and adjusting and addressing what we need in our schools so that, like for instance, a charter school might move into our city. And they're going to look at the local public school, any city. They're gonna look at the local public school system. What is it that that school system is not doing that the families in this city need? And then they do that, and our families leave and go there. Why are we adjusting to what our families need? Why aren't we meeting them where they need us to be? That's why they put public education in every community in America. Let's take that responsibility seriously. So, the 2.4 million just this year, imagine every one of those years of enrollment decline. And this is just on the school of choice. There's families that didn't even give us a chance. They didn't ask us if they could go somewhere else and then decide to leave. That's not the full number of kids that left us. But let's work with those two and engage with them too, and figure out ways that we can become the best option for them to stay with us. Because I'll tell you, we are the best option. Audrey, talk to us about the fourth grade numbers.
Okay, so if you're looking at the school of choice, the number, Michelle and I spent a lot of time looking at our school of choice numbers and where the biggest number was. And obviously it's in kinder and sixth grade. But also the fourth grade, 83, really stood out to us. And so we wanted to see where were those fourth graders, where did they want to go? And clearly the biggest number is quantum, because the idea that to get into quantum, you need to get into fourth grade, because there's 2 classes, that's 64 students, and that's when you need to get in. So when we looked at,
Before I forgot one part of that, the TK and K numbers in the lost students column there, we're gonna drill down into that even further too. And there's a lot of things that maybe some opportunities for us there, but also that's a little bit squishier of numbers, because a family might wanna go to a certain school for TK, they don't get that school, they don't necessarily go somewhere else, maybe they keep their student for another year and they started in kinder, or they can be like in a Montessori program or something and they come to us in first grade. We're gonna drill down on those numbers next and look for other opportunities. But what Audrey's about to go into is an opportunity that's before us of something that we can do right now to address our sixth grade situation on this. And so in a future meeting, we'll talk about the TK and K and opportunities there.
okay, so if you look at the quantum students, this is the number of school of choice for quantum for the 25, or for this current school year. So yeah, we have 56 fourth graders, 13 fifth, 55 sixth graders, 14 seventh, and 1 eighth, 139 students. Well, we know that in its current model, the fourth graders are all gonna get in, because we have 64 spots and we have 56 students. But in fifth, sixth, seventh, and eighth grade, the chances of any of those students coming in is really non-existent.
These are the numbers of the kids that wanted to go to
Yeah.
us for the current year, from last year
Yeah.
to this year. Yeah.
So when we looked at the students that didn't get in, we noticed that we had 33 students that were on school of choice for quantum that didn't get into quantum and were lost. And when we drilled down to each individual student, we found out that of those 33 students, 11 of them went to classical, 4 went to heritage, 5 went to dimensions, and then some went out of district to other things, 2 went out of state. And the big number I think is important is 10 of them were new students to our district who had never been in an EUSD school. So those are 10 new future Escondido graduates, and those were lost. So what can we do to help this problem for the future year, this coming year? So currently, we have 64 fourth graders, we have 64 seats of students who want for fourth grade at quantum. We have 43 students for the 26-27 school year who want to go. And we can accept all of them. We have 14 fifth graders who want to come. We would deny all of them because we have 64 filled seats in fifth grade, and we have 64 filled seats in sixth grade, so we would deny 43 students who would like to come to quantum for the sixth grade.
Let me just interject here. We saw on that previous slide that, and you don't have to go backward, but just 30, okay. Of those lost students, 19 of them wanted to go to sixth grade and couldn't get in because we couldn't fit them in, and they left. Now we have 43 that want to go to sixth grade, and we don't have room for them as it stands now.
So what we would like to propose, or as a proposal and a way to be proactive, is to, for right now, take those 43 fourth graders, and I'm gonna tell you, and I speak from experience, everyone applies in fourth grade because it's the only time they can get in. But they're sad to leave their elementary school. They wanna be at FAR, they wanna stay at Rose, they wanna stay at Ellery, they wanna stay where they are, but they have to get in now. So we would like to say, so the proposal would be to tell those 43 fourth graders, we're holding you, you're in for fifth grade, and you have a good time at your elementary school that you're currently in. And then take and increase a fifth grade class and a sixth grade class at Quantum, and then take all of those 14 fifth graders and do another opening so we can say we can accept more students, and accept 32 of those 43 sixth graders into Quantum for this, and then move on in future years.
So the proposal here, and Rick's gonna talk about some of the educational program aspects of this, would be to no longer have a fourth grade program at Quantum. Take those 2 FTEs, those 2 teachers, and move them into fifth and sixth grade. So the staffing would stay the same, so that we can accommodate the students where we're seeing that the options that parents want start to begin, especially in that sixth grade year, and meet those families where they need us to be. And like Audrey said, just to reiterate, the 43 that want to go to fourth grade next year, we would give them a spot in fifth grade the following year. So they're not out.
And we would communicate that with them, talk to them about that. And as we know, a lot of them do want to stay at their current elementary school and only go into fourth grade at Quantum because that's the time. Otherwise, as you saw in the top part of the current, we have those seats filled, and we have no room left in fifth and sixth grade. They can't get in. So if they don't get in that first batch of 64 in fourth grade, they may never be able to go to Quantum. And they might make a choice to go to one of the other options in the area. Did you have any questions about this so far before we go into the educational side of this?
So what we're looking at doing is changing Quantum to a 5 through 8 school rather than 4 through 8.
Correct.
The same number of classes.
So we would add an additional class of fifth and an additional class of sixth for next year, if this is something that we did. Now, again, let me say this. There's no votes tonight. This is not a decision to be made tonight. What I need to understand is this a direction of doing things like this to adjust our district to meet the needs of our families that they're telling us they have based on the numbers we've been seeing, the conversations we've been having.
And so it's not up for vote, not a decision to be made. We just want to have the conversation. But I think before we go further, can we have Rick talk about going from 5-8 versus the 4 through 8 and what that means for the educational program of Quantum? Rick?
But before you do, don't you think that you'll create the same problem? I mean, the highest number that are going to be denied is in the sixth grade. That's usually when, going into middle school, that's the time that
Right.
Parents are really looking for an
As it currently stands, we would be denying all 43 people
Right.
that want to go there. And in this proposed plan, we'd be able to bring in 32 of those instead of 0. 32 additional students would be able to go to Quantum starting in sixth grade than we are currently situated now, because we only have 2 classes of each grade level there. Adding a third class opens up 32 more seats at Quantum for sixth grade, where parents have showed us this is where they need it.
And again, the same problem about kids wanting to stay in their elementary school. Fifth grade, you have the same problem. That's all I'm saying, if you take that into consideration.
As far as, so there would be additional seats in fifth grade as well, but what we're hearing a lot is that families like to stay at their current elementary school. They
Exactly.
only leave them because Quantum only has space available opening in fourth grade, and rarely do seats open at the higher grades. And so the conversation with the 43 who have applied to go to Quantum in fourth grade for next year, we would be communicating with them that we're gonna save you a seat in fifth grade the following year. If you stay at your current elementary school, we have a seat for you. You don't need to worry that you have to rush out of your elementary school now. They can stay there an additional year. We'll have a seat for you in fifth grade to start the new fifth through eighth grade program that Quantum would evolve into.
You might want to consider making it simply a middle school.
Well,
Again,
yeah.
because you're gonna have the same problems, all I'm saying. You're gonna take fifth graders, and if they don't get in as fifth graders, there will still be some kids who'll be denied. And our biggest problem, and you see it across the board, is sixth grade. That's when
Right.
we lose the highest number of students.
Well, and, okay, so there's, we have some answers for that. We have some other ideas around that very thing in this, and this is a very big picture thing that has a lot of other ideas going forward too, to address that. But one of the things is adding that additional class at each grade level, and it would phase in, so that we would have an additional class from fifth all the way through eighth over the next couple of years to fit these kids in. But if we expanded quantum or made it into a regular middle school, it is a small specialty school, and that is the appeal. And so we don't want to grow it to the point or change it too much to where it becomes just another comprehensive middle school, and it's no longer a desirable option, right? And so we'll talk later in this study session about some other ideas on that, but I think that there's some positive elements to going from 4 to 8 to 5 to 8 for what is the core essence of what makes quantum great, without it growing so big that it becomes something it's not, that it hasn't been, and loses its appeal. And that's why I wanted, like, Rick could talk about that aspect of the going 4 to 8 to 5 through 8, and why we're looking at that as being a positive thing to improve the appeal of quantum. That's,
I think it's worth a try, even. No?
Mr. Oser?
So, thank you, Mr. McGuire. So, going back to those three essential questions, as Trustee Paulson pointed out, bringing the educational opportunities to the forefront. So, thinking if there wasn't educational value to this topic, it wouldn't even be on the table. And so, there's some real specific educational value that answers the questions. Does this contribute to the improvement of our educational opportunities? And so, as has been shared, these are just discussion topics. There's several other ideas that are going to be presented for us to work with schools and the amazing teams that are at the school sites, that brilliant, especially the quantum team, very creative, divergent thinking group of educators who can further establish whether or not this is a viable opportunity. So some things to consider as we explore the question, does this enhance the educational experience? There's going from a 4th through 8th grade specialty school to a 5th through 8th grade specialty school could increase student readiness. We know that developmentally, 4th graders are very different than 5th graders. When we think about 4th graders on the same campus as 8th graders, and with some of the classes, or some of the experiences being intermingled, having that wide age span is significant, especially at the beginning of the year when 4th graders are really 3rd graders in a couple of months. Also, thinking about especially quantum and the amazing program that has been developed over the years. So there is possibilities of enhancing program coherence. We know that at quantum, even though it's a 4th through 8th grade program right now, or 4th through 8th grade school, 4th graders actually are self-contained. So 5th through 8th grade actually have a very different experience than the 4th graders. The reason why is because developmentally, 4th graders, being 9, some 10-year-olds, are very different than the 5th through 8th graders. So even the quantum team knows that they need to differentiate and create basically two instructional experiences within that specialty school. Additional things to consider is that one of the amazing things that quantum has is part of their school day isn't they refer to it as IGRO. And this is an opportunity for teachers to differentiate based on students' academic needs. And so reducing the grade span by 1 grade level can dramatically educational experience and the ability for the school and the teachers and staff to differentiate based on student needs just by reducing the span. Other aspects that are really critical to consider, and especially thinking about the quantum staff where collaboration is at the heart of the community, that moving to 3 teachers per grade level as far as like developing a professional learning community, that has a huge impact compared to when there's just 2 teachers at a grade level. And with even the possibilities of doubling up the grade span. So 5th and 6th grade could do some activities and some collaboration together, as well as 7th and 8th grade. But as I mentioned before, we also know that across the school, there's collaboration that's happening throughout the grade levels. So just providing that tighter span can have a dramatic impact on the student experience. In addition, there could be a possibility for greater flexibility in class composition. So when there's 2 classes at a grade level, there's not a whole lot of flexibility as far as thinking about behavioral, social, emotional dynamics, as well as academics. And then, as I mentioned before, that there's a faster transition to rigorous instruction, once again, at the heart of the quantum experience. And so having 1 less grade span, having 5th through 8th grade, the on-ramp to that quantum, that specialty experience would be much faster. There's a lot of different ideas that could not only bring in more students, but probably more importantly, enhance the educational experience at Quantum. We know that that's a very special, intentional school, and this is an opportunity to even take it to the next level. All of these are just ideas. Once again, reiterating, it's just ideas that are being proposed. The critical thing would be to sit down with the Quantum team and let the real thinking actually happen. So just want to reiterate that these are just ideas. And that team, there's no doubt in my mind that they could take this opportunity and actually make it something beyond extraordinary.
And I wanted to add just one more thing to what he said about the 4th grade program there. They do a great job with it, but they are it's very different than the 5th through 8th grade program. When you look at the numbers and what we're looking at too, and where kids want to go and the grades they want to leave, there's a fact here that we need to speak to. From K3, we're at 24 kids in the class, even the charter schools. In 4th grade, those grow to 32. So if you're going to have an opportunity you were not able to get into, let's say a charter school in K through 3, you have smaller class sizes. More seats open in 4th grade, and that's why we see more students leave at that grade level, because that's when more opportunities, more seats are available. And so when they're building out Quantum, that definitely was part of the equation, that we need to have something available so that they don't leave us when there are more seats available somewhere else, and we have our own option that's meeting their needs. And that was absolutely a wonderful thing we did with Quantum. But by working with our families and saying, like, you don't need to go there because they have some more seats available if you want to go to Quantum, and that's your choice, and you do love your elementary school, I'm sure they do, why wouldn't you? You get to go there in 5th grade. We can reduce that leaving because seats become available, while improving the educational program as Rick laid out here. Please. We need to hear from you and what you think about this. We're not necessarily looking for direction, but kind of are you interested in us moving forward in these discussions, working with the Quantum staff, and in designing a new future with them?
Thank you for the information. I just, and I like the creative thinking, I really do. My questions are bigger. I mean, obviously, the Quantum, that's a small component, and I appreciate the creative thinking, and I want to encourage your team to continue to do that. But there's a lot of other students that left, and I'm just curious, do we have the data as to why? Have we done follow-ups? Have we done outreach as to why? You know, because I could probably speculate and probably be good. I've had 4 kids go through transitions. Some's geographic, some social. There's a lot of things. I'm just curious, is there any information that you and your team have garnered that will help us in crafting the future to prevent that? Those are the questions that I hope we can get answers to. I don't know if that's, I imagine it's challenging to get that information. So I want to be sensitive, and, you know, if they left for a reason. They're not necessarily, and oftentimes they're probably going to tell you whatever negative component
Right.
might be. So it's customer feedback, but, you know, I think that's really important to the broader conversation to try and stem the tide. I mean, we're going to continue to go down. It's about trying to slow that. It's just a matter of the demographics of California. We're going to continue to contract, and that leaves another conversation about our infrastructure and how we manage that, which is another day. But well, it goes to revenue and expenses, so it's an element of the conversation that needs to take place, not tonight. But it's about trying to slow the degradation in the areas that we can, knowing that that is going to happen, and then strategically positioning the district in the best possible way. So those are, I'm not sure if I've made any sense, but I hope I answered some questions
Calling a
there.
family who's already left us isn't going to bear us as much fruit as what we're also doing is when you have interdistrict transfers. Obviously, you have to communicate with where you live district for interdistrict transfer, or they notify us that they're going somewhere else. That's the moment where we can have that exit interview kind of conversation for the ones that are actually looking at leaving. But then beyond that too is communicating with our families, especially those that are 3rd grade families going into 4th grade, knowing we lose some there for those new seats that open, but really those families of students that are in 5th grade and what's going on with 6th grade. So we've done a lot of things. We're doing a lot more things now with our middle schools. We're starting to bus our kids from 5th grade over to the middle schools, doing showcases there, and really getting the kids attached to the middle school that they could go to, making opportunities even for families to be involved in that, and having those conversations there that, you know, we know you have options, and what is it that you need to see here for you to choose? This is the option for you. And so we're starting already to be having those conversations. I know some of us have had them at the grocery store and other places and that's what I've asked at a previous board meeting is like, we need to start talking to people, not just us, but everybody, and start bringing that information back. And that's one of the things we hear a lot, especially going into the middle schools. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a little bit, but one of the things we do hear a lot is that we just don't feel like my 5th graders ready to go into the big middle school for 6th grade. And that's why we talked about, like with Quantum, like if do something there is not to grow it beyond what I'm proposing here, because we don't want to lose that small school feel that's good for those families. But yeah, exit interviews, engaging with people in that year we know they're making that choice, and finding out what are they thinking, and what can we do to meet them where they need us to be to stay here, the best option in town.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I've heard those, you know, in speaking with friends, and I think it's a child rearing challenge as well. We want to protect our children from big bad middle school, when in actuality they need to experience that.
And it's not that big and bad as people think. It's not bad at all.
And I've had those conversations with my friends. They're like, oh, it's just, they're going to get overstimulated. I think that's just in the nature, and I don't expect you nor your team to solve that societal challenge that seems to permeate. But it is an element, and I've done my best to say, well, do you really think they're going to be prepared for 7th if you continue to shelter them? And I love our middle school teachers and our administrative staff. They create amazing environments for not just learning, but social development. So it's a tough task. I think that we would be wise to try and engage early, maybe in the 4th and 5th, and you know, as to help quell any fears from
That's
families.
exactly why we're taking kids, 5th graders, over to our middle schools now, so that they can see on the inside. And it's like, it's scary from the outside maybe, but like get inside, interact with the other kids, see the programs we have, see those things, let those kids fall in love, let them go home and talk about they're excited. Give opportunities for those parents of those students before they go there to see what's going on inside the school. And a variety of other things that we're going to start rolling out here that will continue to provide an insight for people inside of our fence lines to see this is what it really is to be at our middle schools. It is not a big scary place. It's a wonderful place. But we also want to make sure that there's options available for families of a variety, the whole gamut of different needs that they may have across all of our schools that we currently have or beyond in the future. So that Bear Valley might be the right option for a student, for your student. Hidden Valley and what they're doing there, and some of the work they're doing there might be the right option for your student. And making sure everybody understands what all the options are that are available and what the life, day in the life of a middle school student really is. And it really isn't something to be scared of. It's a great place. So there's a lot of things, and we don't have all of that on the presentation tonight. More things to come in the future about what we're doing to really bridge the gap in that, the unknowns that come about. What's that middle school experience really like?
I had a question. Looking at the quantum idea, currently it's saying 64 for fourth, 64 for fifth, and 64 for sixth. How
Mhm.
many are in seventh and eighth?
64. Sorry.
So. we
There's
move-
two classes of 32 kids in each of those grade levels at Quantum.
So we move those 64 spots to fifth and sixth.
So we were taking the fourth grade, the current 64 seats, which is 2 teachers, 2 classes, moving those teachers, one of them to fifth,
Right.
one of them to sixth. So we grow it to 3
So
per
then at
grade
that
level.
point, we have 96 seats available,
Mhm.
fifth, 96 for sixth. So when fifth graduates, we only have 64 spots for seventh.
No, and so then part of this, if we were to go forward with this, we would have to phase in an additional class in 7th grade the following year, and an additional
Mhm.
class in 8th grade.
So there is an additional cost.
There would be, but what we're saying is
Year-
that if,
A couple years down the road.
but go back one slide, Mark.
I'm just looking at the additional costs, because we're not looking at, we're talking about 3 or 4 years out, if we want to implement this plan, which I do like the plan,
Yeah,
okay? But I'm just saying we need to also be transparent and say, hey, there's going to be a cost coming down the road, because
Mhm.
once those 96 kids graduate fifth, or graduate sixth and go into seventh, we're now gonna need to boost.
right. And we would hope to have enough kids to do so, and by having those kids means that we've kept kids that have otherwise would have left us. And that comes with the revenue that would offset the cost.
Okay, yeah, also, you're in the slide, you show that it was full for fifth and sixth, meaning if we didn't do this, we would be denying a certain amount of kids.
Yeah, as it stands now, with only the 64 seats available in 4th, and we have 43 applications, so we'd be able to take all of them. But
Right.
14 students want to go there for 5th, and 43 want to start there in 6th. We would be denying all of those as we stand today, because our seats are already filled from the previous classes moving up.
Exactly, so how many students have we lost over the last 5 years as they progress through 4th, 5th, and 6th?
Like
and
from the
4th?
school and then left from the school?
Well, just as left, because we're assuming that in 5th and 6th grade that all of those kids will graduate and move up to the next grade,
Mhm.
and none of them will leave. What has happened in the past in reference to that? Has there been a percentage of kids, or has it been basically?
At
as soon as-
Quantum,
as
it's
soon as
generally
get
they
in as
stay.
4th grade, they're there until 8th.
Generally at Quantum, if they move, their family moves is mostly the reason why they would leave. It's not that common that they would leave. There's usually not very many. When we do the school of choice thing every year, we rarely have seats available at 5th, 6th, or 7th, or 8th.
Okay, thank you, that's all I have.
Which is a testament to why it's it's a desirable school, and families want their kids to be there, and we're just trying to create more opportunity for them to be there.
And go ahead.
I was just gonna say, part of it is probably because it's a small school.
Mm-hmm. That's right, and that's why I was saying if we added the 3rd class at each of those grades, I wouldn't want to do much more than that, because then you're getting close to no longer becoming that, being that small school and that specialty program that it can be.
Yeah, so my thoughts would just echo exactly what you just said. This is a very desirable program, a very desirable school. This is the one people get excited about. and I'm just very reluctant to mess with success. This has been shown to be one of our most popular programs, and to change, to try to change it, and I understand we're trying to get more kids in, but there's a danger there. After third grade, families are looking at, oftentimes they may be desirous of moving to another grade. I mean, I would think maybe we want to see if the quantum people could come up with a way to on-ramp kids at the 5th grade level, or maybe at the 5th grade and 6th grade level, and expand it that way. But to eliminate 4th grade as an option, I don't know,
But
it changes.
4th grade isn't all filled up, though. I mean, we don't even have a full people asking to come.
And part of that, the thinking here is that those 43 is that they would have seats in the 5th grade year. Once they get an extra year at their elementary school, they would be able to get in. And that's something, a practice we probably could continue, so we can engage with those people that are talking about maybe leaving to another school. And that's where we need to be talking to our 3rd grade families every year. And where do you want to go? What are your needs? And start recruiting, and not just even to this school in that way. But also, as Rick was talking about too, and what I was mentioning as well, the 4th grade part of it is kind of different than the 5th through 8th grade. And when we designed, and I mean, I wasn't here, but what was designed for that was really because those seats become available in other options in 4th grade. So it would make sense. We needed to have a 4th grade option to capture them now. But when they get there, the full quantum experience really, I mean, obviously it's there for 4th grade there, but the 5th through 8th grade program is really where it starts to take off. And 4th grade kind of being separate. And so we're saying, let them focus more and really concentrate what that core essence that makes quantum great, focus in on that. And then we'll handle the logistics of making sure families have that available to them for that 5th grade year, so that they could have a promised seat later and not have to look for another option to get in. Because a lot of times you might, like say for Heritage, your first chance to get in is 4th grade, and there's a lot of applications to get in there because of those extra seats that are available. We can make those seats available for them in the 5th grade year, but when they're still applying in their 3rd grade year.
But in that scenario, most of them will be at Heritage, and they're not leaving.
Well, if we just stood back and didn't engage with them, and they want to Heritage because they want to go there for, like, may not be because they want to go there for 4th grade. They might want to be there so they don't go to the bigger middle school or maybe even the high school, and they want to get in. That's when they can get in. We're going to be having those conversations with these families, and not just waiting for them to tell us they're interested in leaving, but talking to all of our families about what their needs are and how we can meet those. But through that, we would find those families that are looking at options to go somewhere else so that they can get in. Like say, you enroll in quantum now at 4th grade because that's, if you don't get in then, you probably aren't getting in.
Okay.
And the same thing with Heritage and those kind of schools
So
as
it
well.
sounds like this decision's been made.
It has not been made. I'm just
Well,
speaking to our reason, okay.
Well, I think they're just trying to come up with ideas of how, like, we're losing the most students at the 6th grade level, and how can we add students at the 6th grade level? And this is our most desirable program, I would assume, for 6th graders.
Well, and I think we could have an on-ramp for 6th graders and expand it and maintain a
But I
small
think-
school feel.
Well, but I think part of quantum, and you find this in other small schools, is the culture that they create when you start. It's hard to come into the middle of a program and understand that culture and be part of that culture. I talk to those teachers a lot, and that's one of their prideful things about that school is that, they work with them from the minute they walk in the door and build this community and build this small school feel, which I appreciate you guys not wanting to overexpand this program. But I think, again, if we're looking at retaining our kids for the middle school, which is where we're losing them, I think this is one of the great options, is because we're creating that capacity to keep the kids where they want to be. They want them in quantum, and that, I think this is creating more opportunities for those students to stay here. And again, the 4th grade isn't even all full for the people that have asked to come this next year.
There's another aspect here that I think to speak to it. The decision hasn't been made. But this is here right now, and we have some things on the next slide to talk about further out ideas that are possible further out. This is something that's available to us right now. We wouldn't be able to add additional classes in fifth and sixth grade or any other grades because of the size of the school and the capacity of it. We wouldn't be able to physically have the infrastructure to support additional classes. What this opportunity is available to us right now for next year is if those two fourth grade classes become fifth and sixth grade classes. So the facility doesn't have to change, and we wouldn't have the time to change it by the start of next year. So that's the only reason why we're using this first as an example of something we can do now for next year. But if it's something where it's more of an interest to keep the fourth grade and expand fifth and sixth grade, seventh and eighth later on, we would need additional year or two to be able to upgrade that facility to accommodate that. But of course, that also comes with the cost as well. So this is something where it doesn't create an additional cost because of the facilities needs. It's available to us now, and that's why we wanted to have the discussion about it. Not that a decision's been made, it's a different direction and different decision and a different scope of work if we were gonna add additional classes for other grades without eliminating fourth grade.
I don't wanna beat this to death, but you're gonna need to make a decision the year after, 26, 27, because you're gonna have the sixth graders, you're gonna have 3 sixth grade classes, and you're gonna have to add a class for the seventh grade within a year after that anyhow. And I think what Zesty said, I think one of the big attractions at Quantum is the small school size. Right now, they're at 320, yes?
In front of me, but I think that's about right.
And if you add 2 more classes, they'd be at 384, still a nice small school. And even if you add 2 more classes, or 7th and 8th, you'd still only be at 458, and which makes me think of Miller School, a school that was always our lowest in numbers, but also was one of our more popular schools. I had one of my boys actually went through Miller, and it had that small school feel, and it was very homey. So that might be something to look at as well. The fact that smaller schools are more attractive.
So, yeah.
So
I mean, I think that's a huge desire to be in a small, where every staff member knows your kid, knows your family,
Yeah.
and you feel like they're looking out for them. Not to say that's not happening at the school sites, but I mean, that's a huge factor when you're looking at schools and that feel that they have, and especially at Quantum. I mean, they know every single family and siblings, and the siblings come through, and they come back after they go to college, and it's a great feel there. So, but you also, I think another part of this is the school of choice buy-in. Just like charter schools, I mean, if you put them up against each other, the programs are very similar, but you had that parent and that family buy-in to either go to the charter school or take the effort to make it a school of choice. And you've got that automatic buy-in stuff, it's just my neighborhood school. No, I wanted to go to this school. I approached the school. I had to do this step to get in this school, so I'm gonna respect it just that much more. And I think that also creates a great culture as well
And
in a
more
school.
parental involvement as
Yeah,
well.
but I think, this goes back to our bigger idea of, we have all these students who are wanting to pick a different school. Like the school they're with isn't fitting whatever their needs are. So how can we accommodate more of those so they don't leave us? I mean, I think that's a great idea of how they're saying, this school is not for me. I would like to go to this school. I would like to go to, Conway. I send people to Conway all the time because I think it's a fantastic program. But if we run out of room, how can we create capacity at these programs that people are wanting to come to and bring their kids to? So, I mean, I think it's a great idea for expanding the capacity of that school, yet still keeping it a small school and still keeping it a cohesive program.
And we're trying to deal with the 186 students that told us, their parents told us, we'll stay with you if we can go somewhere different than our neighborhood school, and we lost them because we couldn't accommodate them. We know that we're going to lose some portion, and by the history of it, probably a large portion of those 43 sixth graders that we're not going to be able to accommodate at Quantum. But we also know that right now, we don't have the infrastructure in place to be able to add an additional classroom there at this point and continue to do that and when the costs involved in doing that. So the quantum idea is just there is because it's something it's in our reach right now to start working against stemming the tide of the students that are choosing to go, the families are choosing to go somewhere else because we can't accommodate them. It's just the starting point, and there's more for us to talk about tonight
Well-
on other ideas that are further out for that.
Well, and I would say the majority of the calls I get from either people I know or from the public are, how do I get my student into this school? How do I get them into Bear Valley? How do I get them to LR Green? How do I get them to Quantum? How do I get them to Bernardo? Those are my calls. And then when I say, you gotta put it in the school of choice, and they go, oh, we didn't get it there. How do I fill out an inter-district transfer? That's the second most common question I get. And I don't like those calls because I love all of our campuses. And again, I think that's something we're working on, is how do we change the perception of all of our campuses? Because we know what fantastic programs we're doing. But again, I think that's a huge frustration for parents in this district, is they have certain schools they want them to go to, and if their kids don't get in there, they're not wanting to stay with our district. And so how do we reach those parents?
Maybe we can talk about some of the further out ideas that we wanted to put before you and have a discussion about too, because if we're spending all of our time just talking about quantum, there's a bigger picture here that we're wanting to talk about. Multiple different approaches to meeting this family's needs that we're knowing that they have. They've told us that they have. And so that we can continue to look at adjusting our district to meet those needs and not continue just to keep things the status quo, while that status quo is netting us a loss, hundreds of students every year, because they're finding options that meet their needs somewhere else. And so maybe if I can just go on to the next things, and we can talk about quantum and those things all as one bigger conversation, maybe that would be just to kind of see our thinking on this. And it's not just about the couple of grade levels at quantum that we were talking about. Would that be okay? If I go on to the next thing, okay. So, just to introduce this, there's some pretty big ideas, bold moves on this slide here. And we have some kind of questions we've asked ourselves and come from the conversations we've had. But just to quickly go through them, and I know Rick can talk about all of those questions there too as part of this conversation. So we're really eager to have a two-way conversation on that. But like for instance, we have several schools, our elementary schools, that are DLP schools. And at those schools, they're all doing two different schools at once. There's an English-only school, and there's a dual language school in the same school. So you'll have at every grade level, 1 or 2 classes of DLP and 1 or 2 classes of English only. And so they're trying to do 2 different schools at the same time. And our thought was, what if we were to consolidate that? And obviously that's a big move, and there's a lot of community involvement and conversations we have to have. That's why this is not something we can do right now. But it's a conversation we have had. We've had it in different venues here, even those of us in this room. Would having a school that's only focused on the DLP program, where everything in that school is immersed in the DLP program. And that way we're not trying to do 2 different things at once, just as an idea around the DLP. One thing we also know is we have, like we talked about, a lot of families we've heard from, we talked to, that we know, I just don't feel like my 5th graders ready to go into the comprehensive middle school next year. I wish they could stay at their elementary school. I know when most of us were in elementary school, they were going to 6th grade. And so is it something to look at of adding a 6th grade at some of our elementary schools, so that those families that feel they need to have that extra year at the same school and that continuity there, and then go into 7th grade at the comprehensive middle schools like that. Now remember, our school district had 22,000 kids with all the schools we have. We have 22,000 kids. So could we make room for a 6th grade class to continue at the same elementary school? At many of our schools we could, facilities-wise. Then of course, we talked about quantum being very desirable, and part of that's being a small school, and a lot of people want that, and I think an energy growing around what we're doing in our schools. Is it even something we should look at? This district, its people, 2 of our own teachers developed and designed quantum. Could we do it again? Those 2 teachers are still here. Could we do it again? Well, we have a facility that we could expand and have another school built out within our means without having to build something. We already did it next to Del Dios. So that's an option too. Now these are ideas that are going to take us 1, 2, 3, 4 years to come to fruition. But we will never get there in 1, 2, 3, 4 years if we don't start thinking, is this the direction we want to go in? And that's my pitch, I guess, in this whole idea is, instead of coming before you and always talking about what we can cut to balance our budget, let's also start seeing what we can do to grow our resources to balance our budget and increase and improve the services we're providing to our community by adjusting and providing options that our families are finding somewhere else by hundreds every year. So these are just some ideas up there. You can see there's some guiding questions we've included about each of those things. They're big topics, believe me. We may not be able to get through all of it tonight, but I just wanted you to see, like, this is more than just the idea about quantum. It's not a small thing we're thinking. We're thinking about we're redesigning many of our schools to change them to meet the needs of the kids we have today. We want to redesign our whole system so our school district meets the needs of the city that it serves. And that's what some of these ideas, and if you have others, we need to hear about it. We need to start thinking about it. Because if we just keep doing the same thing every year, well, people are finding that they need something else. And I'd like to start doing things in this district we would all like, our whole system would like to be able to have the permission to meet the needs of our community that they're finding somewhere else, here in the USD, to support our families, our people, this community. So that's my rant. Let's have a discussion.
I think the idea of adding the 6th grade as an option, I know Conway does it that way,
Mm-hmm.
and children aren't forced to stay if
No.
they feel they're ready for middle school, but some are happy to get another year, and
Mhm.
some parents are happy to give their children another year to mature.
About 70% of the Conway 5th graders stay for 6th grade, and others go to one of our comprehensive high schools or find another option. Hopefully they go to one of our comprehensive high schools, but about 70% of that 5th grade class does traditionally stay with us at Conway.
So that might be an option to offer. As you said, we do have the room.
So just, oh, sorry, Mark.
No, go ahead. Go ahead, Doug.
So just staying with the TK through 6 schools, I mean, that's how all of our schools used to be. I actually was when they made the transition to the 6th through 8th grade schools, I was the last class at Central, and I stayed for 6th grade. That seems like an easy move. That's a matter of putting a teacher and a classroom and having them prepared to teach a self-contained 6th grade classroom. That seems like something that we could do right away and that would give families an additional option, assuming that the kids at each school come in nice packets of 32
That's why
students.
it's not as easy to do right away for next year, but it's something that we'd want to make sure that.
But we could do an interest survey and see how many
Yes.
families at each school
Yep.
would be interested, and I think we might find that it's a whole bunch more than we think.
Oh, I think
thi-
it's a lot.
I think we might wind up suddenly being like, ooh, we need 2 teachers at some schools.
And that's where, because there's going to be a shifting of staff, and we're already into that, where we're setting up our staffing for next year, that there could be a shifting of staff, right? If they're not going to 6th grade at the middle school, we can't have empty classrooms there with teachers in them. We would have to have time for us to really do this in the not rapid fire way, so that we're making sure that our staffing is there, and we're not a knee-jerk kind of way to go about it in that. And so we want to make sure that we're also working with our association partners and all of that, and following all of the transfers and how we would do these things. That's going to take us some time to figure out. I don't want to, the quantum thing, they're like already ready to go. We as far as a school and the way it is, and the 4th grade thing is just not having that, but talking to those families that they can be in their 5th grade year, that's a much more attainable thing now. But all of these things that are on this slide here are going to take us, the TK6 thing, that might be a year out to talk about all the staffing and stuff. That's probably more near term than the other things on this list. But that's where I just wanted to have that. Does the board see that the direction that we go in, is it to start looking at ways for us to start meeting the family's needs based on the data we've shown you on the school of choice alone and just the choices they're finding to go somewhere else for options? I want to recommend that we start looking at ways to provide those options here. And these are just some of the ideas to start to do that.
The additional TK6, for me, the additional TK6 schools, that's an obvious way to go.
We would be bringing back, if we were to go forward with any of this, we would be bringing back things for, if it requires a vote, but for actual decisions to be made. I just want to say it's just a discussion. But yeah, like TK6, we're probably going to bring back some ideas for that to really firm that up for something to start really working on in a real way to make it happen at some of our schools. I think an interest survey is absolutely necessary.
Yeah, obviously, community engagement with this, but this is, I like this frame of thinking. I like this thinking outside of the box. Just to give you, I was actually texting my son because he teaches out of state, and they have broken it down differently. It's not the traditional K through 5, 6 through, it's not. They've broken it down differently. And there's pros and cons to everything, but I think that works for the community that district serves, and I think that's the most important thing. But I like the idea, and I would just encourage everyone involved to don't limit it. If this is a possible way of thinking, make sure you go down that road as far as possible, and not just, these are great, this is a great start, TK through 6. Maybe there's a different variable that we'll get from the community feedback that, it's not going to be easy, but I think this is the kind of thing, this is the challenge with public agencies, is we're not nimble. It's very methodical. We as a board, and that's a challenge, but I think if the innovative mindset is ingrained going forward, it helps to kind of shorten that turning radius that oftentimes takes, by the time you get it implemented, the community's changed, or the demographics are different. But I think I encourage keeping this creative mindset as that foundation is going to help our community in the best possible way. So I think, I'm excited about these. I love all these ideas, and the community will tell us, I think, what they want.
Mm-hmm.
And in the end, that's what we have to listen to.
For the DLP Academy, so we're talking about consolidating and having one school that's entirely DLP. Is that?
And not necessarily just the one school, but we have four elementaries right now.
Right.
And so it could be two like that, and consolidate, that, or just consolidate two of them into one. I mean, I think we wouldn't do two at one time. It would be more like to do one of them, one consolidation at once, and make sure we got it right. Again, we have to be very methodical, and we got to go slow to go fast, but make sure we do it right. But yeah, I would say if we have 4, could we have 2? Yeah, but I would start with 1 if we were going to go down that road. And if that's what the community around the schools we're talking about consolidating would want us to do.
Right, and I think surveys are going to be extremely important there, because I have the feeling that what we're going to find is that those families like things the way they are, and they want because there are many walkers and many families that want to stay right at the school that they live by. They may be very happy with the schools as they are.
I think they are. I think they're very happy with the school. I think a lot of our families that are still with us are very happy with the schools as they are. But also, could we do something that they haven't even thought of that's even better?
Trust us, you'll like it.
And that's coming from talking with them, and it's showing them that there are options that we can provide that are being provided elsewhere, and seeing what they think about those options. Do you want those options available here in Escondido? If they don't want that at all, then we go a different direction, absolutely. This is not something, no decision's been made,
Yeah.
not forcing
forcing
down
down
anybody's,
anybody.
to make this decision that they have to do this, absolutely not. But part of the driving force behind the DLP Academy too is to improve the educational program. And I
Right.
think ultimately that's what we're trying to do.
I
in
think
this.
what a lot of families would be very interested in, and I know we've talked about this, but would be a dual language program on one of our schools that is not in the center of town. For example, a North Broadway, a Miller, and L.R. Green, where families come in and the transition is you start off mostly in English and move into Spanish rather than vice versa. So I think that's something that we might find through a survey that many families are interested in.
And that would be more
as
like one of
well.
the redesigns we're doing at many of our schools, and that could be a concept that they could work on as a redesign of their school if that's something that their community was very interested in, absolutely. Doesn't have to be separate from, could be in addition to, it could be this, not at all, and that, that's what I'm seeing. We have to gauge the interest in stuff. The point of putting these out here, these are things we've thought about, ways to improve the educational program, address some of the needs we've already heard from our families, and then, like, if we're gonna start looking at doing these things, and I feel like there's some direction already here to start gauging the interest of our community around some of these ideas. And I think that's good direction for us to start working and moving in a direction to figure out what direction we should go in.
Yeah, and I think it would be really important to get a large-scale survey of some of the schools, because in the redesign process, we get a lot of teacher input and some parent input, but I think getting larger amounts of input from the larger community would be very important. Moving over to the specialty school, I think everybody would love us to look at another specialty school. I think that, especially something like a 4 through 8 or a 5 through 8 or a K through 8. Because a lot of people, if they see what's going on at their school, they're gonna be more likely to stay there for middle school if that's available there, with some separation, obviously. But
Yeah, a K-8 idea too is something that's floating around as well. We just didn't have any more room on the slide. But also that would probably require some more facilities upgrades to accommodate that number of students added. And some of what you said too would actually be something a school currently could redesign around, that kind of thing. A new specialty school, if we were looking at what quantum seems to be very desirable in that, and if we had another option, it wouldn't have to be just like quantum. It would be designed in the current day by, different or new designers or even some of the same, but it doesn't have to be just a replication of quantum. Perhaps the community wants some other options, and I know some of our competition in town has options we don't have available at our schools. And I would want to look at that too, because from the numbers, I'm not going to go back to the slide again. Hundreds of families are choosing options that we have here in the city that aren't ours. So we have a choice to allow, and yes, demographics and people are leaving the state, across the state, that kind of thing. But people are also still staying in the state and choosing to go outside of EUSD for options that we don't have available. We can continue this conversation at future board meetings. We'll want to seek out some community input. We'll start working on that. But really, all of what we were trying to talk about tonight is ways to, based on the numbers of families that are leaving us for other options that we don't have available, can we start looking at providing some of those options ourselves? Any other?
So it looks like there's pretty much a consensus that these options that you've provided are worth pursuing.
Exploring at least, right? Yeah, right.
I feel like there's consensus. I think we appreciate, the out-of-the-box thinking, because, honestly, that's one of the reasons I joined the board and ran for the seat, because I would get the crying parents because they didn't get into charter, and they were terrified of sending their kids to these schools, and I was like, that's not okay. And we have terrific schools to send our everyone's student to, and so the more options we give them, the more competitive we become with the charter schools. We have fantastic teachers. We have fantastic programs. Don't, I heard you, Doug. But
I'm saying, if you look at the numbers,
they're not.
the charters are not the issue. It's, it's other districts, beyond the charters. I mean, I'm not, the charters, we're losing some kids to the charters, but we're losing a heck of a lot more to surrounding
But
districts.
that's also because they're at capacity. That the charters are at capacity. So if like he's saying, if another charter came in, we would lose even more. I mean, how many were left with Epiphany?
Well,
Wow.
yeah.
So if
well,
another charter came in, it's just because they're at capacity. It's not because people are not choosing to go
No,
there.
but that was the new shiny object.
But that's what
Yeah.
I'm saying. We need to be the shiny object.
And
We
are-
need to be where they want to go, and that's what we're trying to work towards.
Well, especially starting, for instance, with the kindergarten.
You're.
We could be offering tours to prospective kindergarten students.
Absolutely.
That would.
That's an
to
approach as
show-
well.
To show the parents what facilities we have available. All
Yes.
the new playgrounds we've put in and the great kindergarten facilities we have now. with
Yes.
The different schools. I don't think
That's
new people realize just
Right.
what we have to
Oh,
offer.
that's,
at
I ranted about that at that last board. I mean, we're not telling people what's happening. We need everybody that works here, everybody that's a part of our community of EOSD to be telling everybody what it's really like here. And we are great. We are shiny. We are that. But we also know that we don't have all the options available to families that they're seeking and getting elsewhere.
Yeah, that's just.
I think another point that I would like to know someday, I knew years ago, is how many different charter schools do we have operating in Escondido? And who are they all? And where are they chartered out of?
Well, we already know the Heritage and Classical are chartered, authorized by this board.
Absolutely.
But then we have like Dimensions is one that popped up with one of where students had gone.
Dimensions, Montessori, and how many Dimensions campuses are there? And we have the one in the mall, Altus that's chartered by the high school district for elementary.
How is that possible?
Well, and its other schools could be chartered through the county office or even through the state.
Right, I'm just always interested in how many are there, because I find them all the time.
I know we've looked in the past and we found like maybe 10 or so. We can go back and refresh that. And the ones that don't come through us, like they can come and go and we wouldn't even know until students decide to go there, but they're coming in and looking at what we're offering and providing something different than we're offering. It's just how they're getting families to go there instead of staying here. So if there's further discussion on these things, also just as I mentioned, if you can go back to the last slide again, on the facilities funds, we have some remaining bond funds because some of the great work that our facilities department did, our project managers, in the last few board meetings, we brought a couple of change orders forward. We came in under budget on our Mission Phase 3 project. They've worked really hard over the years to get all the matching funds available to us from the state for our projects that we do, and because of that, we have some remaining bond funds that can help support some of the infrastructure needs, if it's a TK6 thing over the next couple of years, or the quantum thing, because clearly, as we talked about, we would have to add a 7th and 8th there if we went forward with that. And so we have an opportunity. There's the layout there that we would probably add a couple of additional classroom buildings there to accommodate that. So we have the means in our facilities funds to be able to support some of these things. And I'm saying is to advocating to invest those in getting more kids to stay with us so they can experience the bright, shiny education that we have to offer here in Escondido.
Thank you. No, I appreciate the time you and Cabinet put this together, and I think we have consensus of moving forward with some of these creative ideas to really attract more students and retain the students we have, and really showcase. You got a peanut gallery behind you. That's why I put the podium there, so we can't see them to distract us. But again, no. No cards, sorry. No, but again, not only attracting them, but retaining our students and our families that we do have, because the people that are here, they do love Escondido and they love our district, and so do our teachers. And again, how do we showcase that as well? But all these are great ideas. I've always wanted a Quantum West, but baby steps. But thank you again. We appreciate your presentation and the direction we're heading.
And that's a bear to get across town.
Oh my gosh, tell me, yes.
Cross-town.
We don't have enough time to solve that tonight, John.
Yes.
Well, I'm just saying, if we
I-
had a
Yeah.
Quantum West or something similar.
Absolutely. Give more opportunities. Absolutely. All right, so I'm gonna wrap this meeting up. Our next meeting, our regular meeting, is on March 5th, right in this very room and on Zoom. So we look forward to seeing you all then in your public comments of. But thank you so much. We are adjourned.